know, doing the card maneuver first.
Hey friends, you're watching BrainStormAcres. I'm Henry.
And I'm Irene.
And we have a bit of a surprise this morning because we have a mostly...
It's blue.
Kind of blue anyway.
That spot over there is blue. That side over there is cloudy, but that's okay. We'll take blue for now.
We're going to get started on the not everything green is good.
Our yard looks like a jungle right now, and that's just fine. It happens usually at least once a year. I had the pathways and stuff really cleared out a month ago. I've been picking a little bit, but the last week or so we've just been incredibly busy. And then yesterday we had a quarter-inch of rain, which I know for a lot of people in the United States is nothing, but for us it's a total godsend. So it means we didn't have to water this morning, and it means that the weeds are just loving it out here.
Yeah, they grow really fast in the desert because that's what they have to do or they die.
Right. They have, well, they don't procreate, which is their point in life. Their goal in life is to make baby plants. So they have a really short life cycle.
Yeah. So we're both going to be working on one part of the yard, and then I'll be working over in a section that really only I'm the one of the two of us ought to be in.
Well, it's not blooming yet, so I can still help.
It started blooming.
It's starting to bloom.
It's blooming right now this morning. So unfortunately, it went from nothing yesterday to blooming today.
Yeah, because it got rained on.
Well, let's go talk about some of the plants.
Right. Ah, there's one right now. This is called goat head. It's got such lovely little cute flowers, little yellow guys, and not only do we make sure we get as much of it as possible, but we make sure we get all of the seeds. This one doesn't currently have seeds on it, but this is my number one enemy in terms of long-term damage to your environment. It produces the most nasty stickers you can imagine that will go through flip-flops, they will go into puppy feet, they will go into kitty feet, they will get into your goat's hooves to the point where you have to dig them out and you can wind up with infections. I mean, really nasty. I've known people who, flat tires on bicycles are very common. Flat tires on cars can happen, especially if you have bad sidewalls on your tires, which you shouldn't have if you're driving on dirt roads anyway, but you know, that's the reality of life. So I will watch as I go around today. This is my number one enemy. Let me find the trash can, because this never goes anywhere except directly into a trash can or directly into a burn barrel. Some of these plants, people will say, oh, I pulled it and I threw it over to the side. Some of these plants are capable, with the juice that they have left in their leaves, of finishing the cycle to produce seeds. White horehound is particularly one of those plants that can do that. And years ago I had somebody helping me pull weeds, and they were tossing them to the side. I said, you can't do that. They have to go into something because they will still produce seeds. And the whole point is to reduce your seed bank so you don't have problems in the future years. So let me get this trash can over here. Oh, here's another goat head. Let's see if this one's got any seeds on it. No seeds yet. This is the most goat heads I've seen in the yard in years, so I suspect some very old seeds are germinating because we've had more rain this year than we have in several years.
Where do they come from, do you know?
They get stuck in the bottom of your shoes and you drag them in from other places. These, we had absolutely no goat heads here when we moved here. They came in with a load of topsoil that we purchased from a reputable topsoil person.
And then one of the people we had do some work with us wasn't real clean about making sure his boots were clean when he came over here.
Here's a big trick. Okay, if you have goat heads in your yard, you wear flip-flops. Now you wear them carefully, but you wear flip-flops, and every time you go outside, it will act like Velcro. It will pick up goat heads in the bottom of your flip-flops, and every time you feel them in there, you have to stop, pull them out and throw them away. Not toss them someplace random, throw them away. Into a garbage bag, into a burn barrel, into someplace where they're going to be destroyed. And if you keep doing that, it works like Velcro. You gradually picked up all the stuff. I got goat heads popping up all over the place again. And I'm like, are you checking your boots? And he's like, I said, do you have goat heads at your place? He said, oh yeah, they're all over the place. I said, before you come over here, check your boots. He was bringing them in for me. Now here's one that's not completely done yet, but you can see that. That is going to break into probably 4 or 5 pieces, and there's spikes on each one of those. Now when they completely break apart, they'll be hard and brown, and these are tiny still. They will get twice that size before they brown out. But I want to get them now because I don't want any of those. I had them completely under control for several years, and like I said, this is the most, usually every summer I get a few plants. And I've been watching. Here's another one that's got a nice seed pod on it. And you can see how prickly these are going to be. And these are still babies. They have not finished growing yet. Those spikes will get another, probably 1/8 of an inch long. And that's going to break into pieces. The reason they call it a goat head is it's shaped kind of like a goat head, sort of triangular in all directions, and each one of those triangle points is going to have a spike on it. So goat heads, #1 enemy. This is #2 enemy. And this is actually harder to control in a lot of ways. This is solanum. It's in the nightshade family, and it has beautiful flowers. But it has really solid roots. See, there's the flowers. It will produce things that look like little baby tomatoes. And you see that I have them coming up all the way over here. When I pull these out, that's not going to kill that plant. It's just going to control it. Some of these other things, when I'm pulling them out, they're gone. But these things, even if I dig down, those roots will last and they'll keep coming back. So I have to keep pulling them out. Here's another one. This one showed up really bad this year. This is a wild morning glory. It is not bindweed, it is a wild morning glory. They came in here 3 years ago with birds. I don't know whether it was in the bird seed or whether the birds just pooed it out from someplace else. Morning glories are against the law to grow in Arizona because they're considered to be a major agricultural pest. So even though you do occasionally see the seeds for sale in the store, technically it's against the law. And I've even asked places and they're like, well, nobody enforces it. And I'm like, okay, well, they should, because it's a problem. I'll show you the other native. I don't know that it's native. A lot of these things are not natives, and that's one thing. Oh, people are like, oh, don't kill the wildflowers. I'm like, 90% of the things we have trouble with here are not natives. And we have a couple of really good books, and it'll talk about where did this thing come from, what kind of a problem is it, if domestic animals like goats and sheep eat it, can they die of alkalinity poisoning, all kinds of things like that. But that's the really important things for people to know, especially if they're raising critters, that some of these plants that will grow super fast when we get a rainstorm can be toxic. There's a rancher down in Chino Valley that lost 70 or 80 cows about 6 or 8 years ago. And they were concerned at first it might be something contagious. You know, they drove everybody in there and checked everything out. That was alkalinity poisoning. A lot of ranchers around here are not particularly good about managing their pastures. And when you get sudden rain, certain weeds will tend to grow really quickly. And all of a sudden, the animals are just chowing down because they're so excited to see something green. It's not grass, it's crap. It's really crappy weeds, but it's toxic. Welcome to the jungle. This is a non-toxic weed. It's in the sunflower family, and its generic, one of its nicknames is sneezeweed. I don't usually allow it to grow in the yard because I am allergic to it. It puts out huge volumes of pollen. So whether you allow this stuff to stay in your yard or not is a matter of personal preference. If you're not allergic to it, I guess you can do it. I normally do not allow it to come in. This is pigweed, which is considered to be a major agricultural pest. And farmers spray like crazy to get rid of it. We I just pull it out. Not a big deal, but you know, it's in the amaranth family, so it spreads like a weed. And as long as we just try and make sure that things don't go to seed. And that's a trick that I've mentioned to people for years. Sometimes I don't have the time to go through and weed every single little teeny plant, but I can go through and take the seed heads off. Now, somebody out there is going to go, oh my God, she's pulling up this lovely plant. It's got these wonderful white flowers on it. This wonderful white flower came in a plant that I bought at a big box store probably 10 years ago, and I've been fighting it ever since. What's the name of it?
It's yarrow, which is a plant that's and is grown by a lot of people for its medicinal uses.
Right. However, it spreads not only by runners but by seeds. So I made a very hard effort to completely eradicate it in the beds. It's still in the surrounding area, and if I just pull off the flowers, that's enough to semi-keep it under control. I don't want to use any chemical controls on it. I have sprayed it with a combination of salt and
vinegar
before, and that does control it, but it doesn't completely could kill off the roots, which is the problem. So this I just yank.
Yeah, the wind blew our small trash bucket.
Yeah, it fell over.
From down by the squash bed.
Yeah, yep. Yeah, there it is. But this came in magically a couple of years ago, and I leave it. And I'll be honest, I'll have to look up the name of it again. But I don't consider it to be any kind of a pest. It's either a penstemon or a wild tobacco, I don't remember. Anyway, I love it. It's just like I have a hollyhock sitting out in the middle here. I'm not going to worry about stuff like that. I am just, you know, and I've got violas that have self-seeded in here. That's not a sin. These guys can self-seed all they want. What I will do is I will, if I'm doing a picky weed, I'll pull out the grass, because I don't want the grass in here. And people will say, well, why would you pull out grass? Well, a lot of these things produce what they call foxtails, which are a type of seed that gets in the ears of cats and dogs. And I have never seen a foxtail extraction by a vet that costs you less than a couple $100. So,
yeah, it's a real problem when it gets down inside the ear canal.
Yes.
Bruno, our previous dog, had a real problem with that.
Right, and we spent the last time I had foxtails taken out, it was $500 because they had to put him under completely in order to get them out. Also, I have heard of animals actually dying from it. 2 years ago, Jack wound up with an abscess, where they will actually migrate and stick into the skin and cause an abscess. Bindweed. This came in also with that same lovely pile of dirt that we bought from the Professional Gardening Company. And there it is. It's a wild morning glory. It's a wild morning glory. As you can see, it just covers the ground, and you can't get rid of it. All you can do is control it. It's totally impervious to Roundup. It's totally impervious to everything I've ever tried, except that you can control it by picking it and making sure that it doesn't go to seed. And that's the only thing you can do, because again, it spreads by both seed and by runner. Now this is salsify. I normally pull salsify. I know some people grow salsify. It looks like, the flowers on it look like a big dandelion puffball. Whether you grow it or not is a personal choice. I don't allow it in the central part of the yard because it attracts aphids. Aphids love salsify. So when I would start to, I would have not an aphid in the yard, all of a sudden the salsify pops up, all of a sudden the aphids have come in, and next thing I know I've got aphids on my peppers or something else like that. There's a lot of miscellaneous in here that I just don't worry about. But let me show you how again, there's a bindweed here. And this area was bare 2 weeks ago. And all I'm doing is grabbing all of the runners and pulling.
That one broke.
Yes, and they all break. I have sometimes, under the right circumstances, gotten out roots that were 5, 6, 7 inches long, but they're still going to come back. And you have a choice as to whether you ever want to be able to grow anything. If this just gets into your beds, we had this in our beds in New Mexico. And if I didn't keep up with it on a daily basis, I would come out there and my watermelons would have disappeared under this stuff. It will literally smother stuff. This is white horehound right here. And you notice it's small. It's because I really work to keep this down. Outside the fence, and these are a perennial. So you'll think, oh, everything's dead now. It's fine. No, it's a perennial. It'll come back from the roots. Pulling it out as much as I did here, that will not come back. They do have decent sized roots, but they're not super hyper invasive that way, but they're tenacious. They put out thousands of seeds. I want this out of my yard. And even in the areas that we walk regularly, I want it out because it collects on your jeans and stuff like that. It gets in the dog's fur. Jack is like Velcro. He collects burrs, and this stuff is terrible on him. And this looks messy. I don't care. Messy is not important to me about things like this. What I care about is the plants that are going to be invasive and problematic. Here's an excellent example of what a bindweed will do. This guy is climbed up, and here's a flower. Perfect. And I understand why people think this is cute. I think it's really cute on the side of the road, but not in my yard, not anywhere near my garden. I don't know about toxicity on these because we don't have any grazing animals here, except for Isa. She's a bit of a grazing animal, but she does not show any interest in this. She just likes...
She goes after the grass.
The grass. They're pretty, no doubt about that. But you have to consider, if you want to live here and you want to have a garden, no. There's a lot of self-discipline involved in living anywhere. You know, I know people who like the way poison ivy will climb up a tree. Well, I'll tell you what, after you've had a systemic poison ivy response, you may not like that as much. See, there's some more solanum, and there's a lot of this here. Now, one of the reasons solanum is so evil is the stickers on it. This is a tiny one in comparison to some of the other ones. It doesn't have much in the way of spines. That's still enough to stick in your hands, and the spines are a pale pinkish, yellowish orange color, which means when you get them in your skin, you can't see them. This is showy flora clock. I don't worry about it unless it's in the way.
Now it's a vector for?
The squash bugs really like that. So they become, like I always make sure at the end of the season, I make sure I clear off all the debris, every single piece of the debris there, because they'll lay eggs in the debris, and if you don't clear it out over the winter, then the next spring, they're all just waiting for you. The first warm day, you got squash bugs all over the place. Here's an import that is the bane of the West. Commonly seen in any decent Western program, tumbleweeds. And when they're little, they look like grass. And at this age, they're still fairly flexible. But when I pull these things, when they're bigger, I will get a rash on the inside of my arms any place they touch me. So I could be out here on a fairly warm day pulling tumbleweeds, and I have to wear a long sleeve shirt. They have little teeny, let's see, these are too baby. Well, maybe you can see on this anyway. You can see each leaf has a spike on the end of it. And as this gets older, every one of those spikes will harden. So it's like a big sprawly cactus almost. It just sticks the stuffers out of you. Now I try and be careful when I pull them, because especially when they get bigger, we find in our area here, the not daddy longlegs, the praying mantises love them. They sit on them and wait for bugs to fly over. These actually can, at certain times of the year, be full of tiny little flowers, which are really cute. I think this one here you can actually see. Yeah, this one still has some flowers on it. The flowers are mostly gone by, but it'll actually be like totally encased in little tiny flowers. And I'll look and see if I've got a better one than that. They're pretty, they're really cute, but every single one of those tiny, tiny flowers is going to produce, you know, 100 seeds or something silly. And yeah, what we did to control this when we first moved here is when we had a year, there's a bare spot down along the driveway, and we would decide what the bad guy of the year was. And one year it was tumbleweeds. When we moved here, we had, you know, 4-foot tumbleweeds everywhere. And we gathered them all up and we burned them. And this stuff burns like an explosion. But we burned stacks and stacks and stacks of tumbleweeds, and that was enough to control it. We also have to, we actually know somebody who burned their house down. There was a fire, and they hadn't realized that the tumbleweeds had built up against the side of the house that they never went in and out of. And when these things catch on fire, they flash over really fast and really hot, and it burned his house down. This is what Henry's going to be working on. This is ragweed, and that one is not blooming yet. And normally what I do is I just go around the yard and yank them. They come out easily when it's wet like this, and unless you have some strange urge to have a terrible allergic reaction, I recommend you pick them. We don't normally allow them to bloom inside the yard, and sometimes I'll even clear right outside the yard so that the pollen's not blowing in. Every single one of those is a seed.
Put them in the burn barrel.
Yep. Every little flower becomes a sticker, and the top of each flower has little hooks on it that hook into your clothes, to your fur, or whatever you have. Shoelaces and fingers, all that good stuff. Okay, here we have a solanum that is going to seed. You see the flowers are beautiful. The seeds look like little tomatoes, and if you were to pop those open, it'd be full of little tomato seeds, is what it looks like. And you can see on the stem of this how beastly those are. There's a bunch of thorns there that are 1/4 inch long. They will go right through
everything.
Everything. Most of your leather gloves and everything else.
Yeah,
so,
they already went through my leather gloves this morning.
Oh yeah, well, you're wearing light ones. I was actually looking for the heavier ones this morning, but even the heaviest ones, it's amazing they can go through everything. So you have to be careful when you pick them, and you have to expect that at some point you will spend some time getting stickers out of your fingers.
You ready to go get something to drink, Jack?
He says, yeah. He says, drinks is good, Mom.